From Tacoma, Washington, this is the Off the Back Podcast. Hello and welcome to Off the Back Podcast. I'm Matt Bonjour.
And I'm Danny Clark. And this week we are back.
2 weeks in a row.
We're on a streak. We decided to do a little extra podcasting just because we felt inspired and because there's some great cyclocross races and we have a little extra time on our hands.
Well,
this
yeah,
week.
and it's nice to not have a ton of stuff on my plate, and so I get to have a little bit of freedom and get to have some evenings to do some stuff and to talk about some life experiences and
there you go,
all kinds of good stuff.
I love it. Well, it's neat when you actually have time on your hands. You can do things you like.
Right? Like hanging out with my bud.
Drinking some delirium.
Drinking some beer.
Noel for the camera. Hopefully this week. So last week we did try to video the recording, and we did successfully video the recording, but somehow technology again, despite all of its advances in our world, made it seemingly impossible to synchronize the audio with the video track, which you would think is a non-issue because...
Well, it was synchronized at the beginning, and then the further I would get into it, the less synchronized it would be. It was like... And it may have been an import issue, like maybe I accidentally changed some speed setting and increased the speed by 0.001 or something. I don't know, but it didn't make much sense, and it was a little bit frustrating to have to experience that. The other thing that was interesting is that when I had mixed the podcast, I took my little snap noise out, which I was supposed to sync to the video.
Right.
So then I couldn't figure out how to sync.
Classic.
How do people do that? Do they maybe use two audio file? No, see, even that doesn't make sense.
What some people have done, here's our AV tip of the week is use the audio from the video camera as your sync track. Yes. But then as you're syncing the audio from the mics, you just audibly. Well, yeah. That was what I ended up doing, but it didn't work. Something was off. So hopefully this week maybe we'll have that going. I'll have some time tomorrow morning to work on that. We'll see how this goes. Maybe we should just pay someone on Fiverr to do all this editing for us.
Oh yeah, that's that app where you basically can just pick up jobs.
Yeah.
Or you bid for jobs or
basically,
something?
Yeah, you're freelancing. But anywho, we are back this week. We had a good week of some cross racing. The pro road racing's effectively done, more or less for the year. So not seeing a lot of racing happening out there, but yeah, had some good World Cup cyclocross happen. Some really exciting finishes we want to kind of talk about, and we ourselves partook in some cyclocross racing. Yeah, in the Northwest.
Have we ever actually raced together?
I don't think we've ever raced together.
Wow.
I think it always didn't work
because I think you were the first one to take the plunge. Because I remember you raced. Was it down in Tumwater? I think the one with the big puddle. Wasn't that your first race?
I did race that one. I feel like my first one was that in the LeMay Museum, the secondary one.
Oh, the spring?
No, it's it is in that area, Spanaway area though.
Yeah. And then I think you did the park, the MFG one up in the park, and that's the one where you fell.
Oh yeah,
Woodland Park, right? Didn't you endo on that one?
I've crashed a lot. I crashed last week. Thankfully, this week I stayed
you crashed
upright.
Last week?
Not the week before. Okay. It was just a little loose dirt, and I just, but nothing too bad.
Yeah, I was. We'll talk about that. We're going to dive into the race in a little bit more detail because it was a shared experience, and we thought it'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess that was some of our week, but without maybe talking about cyclocross, how was your week? There's nothing else to talk about.
Bike wise,
I did have a wee dabble.
I think I've done some Zwifting, just kind of like alone Zwifting.
Yeah.
I did a workout. I even I've been very optimistic about my FTP.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want to know. I just want to kind of I'm probably around 280 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I even dialed that back and then did a workout, which was this thing was so hard. It was like a minute over, like a minute at 300.
Yeah.
And then another minute at 350.
Ooh, that sounds
awful. And
awful.
then 2 minutes at was it 275? And then that again, and then you repeated that 3 times. And dude, and then at a specific cadence.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about it the other week where when you have something like the Wahoo Snap or the Snapper.
Yeah.
Or the Neo, the
ergonomic trainer,
the Tax Flux and all of that kind of stuff, which is what I use.
It meets OSHA standards. It's ergonomic.
It automatically sets the power.
Right.
And dude, that made it so much easier to just pedal. And maybe it's kind of cheating, because wouldn't you think that as a pro, wouldn't you want to work on cycling at a specific power for a specific period of time? Wouldn't that be of benefit?
Yeah. But that's what it does.
No, but it holds the right. You just cycle at the cadence it's telling you to ride. You pedal at the cadence it's telling you to ride, but it just adjusts the power automatically.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe based on just getting the experience of knowing what it feels like to ride at that rate.
Right.
But I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it. I really enjoyed just knowing that all I have to do is just keep turning the pedals and it's going to automatically adjust.
Yeah.
That felt really nice.
Yeah. The worst part though is if there's a couple times where I'll do a sprint effort on Zwift, and when I come off the effort, I just stop pedaling for a second or two to catch my breath. Literally, I'll just be and then kind of sit back down and start pedaling, and then the erg mode is still on and it's more power, and you're trying to get it back up to cadence, and it's come on.
I feel like every time I stop, I always have Matt Stevens in my head.
Oh yeah.
From one of the GCN workouts.
Yeah, yeah.
Where he's keep pedaling.
Yeah.
Don't stop pedaling.
Those are good. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I've done a few of those training sessions myself.
Yeah. But apart from that, I mean, I haven't ridden out very much at all.
Yeah. Same here. We in the Northwest have had awful weather. It's all of last week was just straight days of rain, and then we had a beautiful weekend, which was nice for the cyclocross racing.
Oh yeah.
And then we since have gone straight back into rain this week. And then I looked in the weather forecast.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, it's supposed to a gale force warning tomorrow for 50 knot sustained or 60 knot sustained winds, which I think is 50 miles an hour. So anyway, needless to say, we will not be riding or out and about. It's
going to be raining on Sunday. Amazing.
Oh boy.
That's going to be so much fun.
Is it?
Dude, there's just something about racing in rain.
Is there?
Well, yeah, the Nats day that I did, that was in rain, and I just remember it taking me about an hour to
warm up,
to stop my teeth from
chattering. That sounds miserable. Well,
I'm kind of excited about that.
I will say, so this weekend, I guess, to touch on my week a bit, is I did a few training sessions.
Oh yeah.
Oh sorry.
How was your week, Danny?
It was great.
Perfect.
No, I've done a few training sessions. I've interestingly just sort of abandoned longer rides, which I know is maybe not the best idea, but it just feels like when you're racing these cross efforts where it's just full out for 40 minutes in our case, or somewhere in that range. It's the idea of going on a long ride is just not interesting to me. And honestly, I'm feeling like really tired, and I don't know if it's the weather or like having done now 3 races this season. And after every race, like I just feel like done for like 2 days after. I'm just like, can barely walk. Like everything hurts. I'm like super tired. So I don't know. I'm feeling like the body may be telling me I'm a little fatigued again, which, you know, at this age, my age, I'm just like,
isn't that how the future is going to be?
I guess, man.
Onwards?
You get in these kind of ruts. And so I did have the fortune of getting a massage yesterday, and as I was on the massage table, and this gal I go to is fantastic. I've been working with her for like 6 years. And she like, I could feel like muscles that just would not let go. And I'm like, God, I didn't even realize like it was my hips and my glutes were like locked up. And so all day today, like everything's felt great, but simultaneously it's also felt very like I feel loose, but I feel unstable because like all these muscles are now relaxed. So it's like this weird sensation.
Everything that was holding you in place.
Yeah, it's like everything that was holding these weird posture adaptations is now suddenly released. So anyway, all that being said is just, again, trying to listen to the body, trying to listen to, you know, some of the mental health part of it, of like, I don't want to go push myself when I just don't feel like it. So it's been kind of a bit of a lackluster week as far as that goes, but and the weather doesn't help. So the only thing is, you know, I guess this is probably the most like back-to-back racing I've ever done in my life. Partly because the work schedule wasn't conducive to racing previously. So I guess I don't really know how to handle racing, you know, every weekend or every other weekend, because I've never done it. And it sounds like it should be pretty easy, but it's making me tired. So anyway,
I think I mean, you're still using the Whoop, right?
Yeah, begrudgingly.
Is it?
I don't want to talk about the Whoop.
I sold mine. I sold mine on eBay, and I had listed it for like whatever. I don't remember, like, you know how it recommends the listing price? I was like, whatever, I'll put it for what it says. Some guy messaged me like, hey, what do you want to get for this? Like, I'll buy it. And I'm like, I don't know, 30? I have no idea what this thing's worth.
Yeah.
So he offers 30, and then the next morning I get somebody offering me 70.
Whoops.
And I'm like, well, I hadn't accepted it, luckily.
Oh, right.
So I was like, sorry. This is my typing mime. Sorry.
Gotcha.
I had to accept the 70.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that paid for like Tracy and I to go out for a beer or something.
Nice. Well, since we mentioned the Whoop, and we're unsponsored.
We're not sponsored by Whoop.
I'm going to speak
candidly.
Well, something like that. So I've been a Whoop user for like 2 years. You know, they sponsor like Team EF and a few others and have a good following. And it did teach me an immense amount about how crappy I sleep. So that was worth it for sure. But there's other, like the Apple Watch, I think now does that a bit.
Yeah.
I don't have one, but and then the Oura Ring is another one. I mean, there's all these fitness trackers that track sleep. There's like sleep trackers that track sleep. So that was really interesting to teach me how poor my sleep habits were. But as far as every other aspect of the Whoop, I'm sorely disappointed. I do have small wrists, and I do wear it as per described, and I've had support cases with them. And my last one was like, hey, look through my history. I've had a bunch of support cases where I'm getting inaccurate readings. So like last
heart rate.
Yeah.
Stuff?
So like last cyclocross race, I had a max heart rate of like 190 something, and the Whoop max heart rate was 175. And I'm like, that's not a small discrepancy at that point.
Yeah.
That's significant. So like,
you were comparing it to your Wahoo ticker.
Which I've also, so the Wahoo ticker I've compared to my Apple Watch. and compared to like a blood oxygen sensor thing, and all three of those would be within a heartbeat, a BPM difference, but the Whoop would then be 10 or 15 off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just not in range. And so anyway, so I sent this email and was like, hey, I've had a bunch of support cases. I'm pretty dissatisfied. And then I ordered the new model. Like I was actually going to cancel.
4.0.
Yeah. And then I ordered the new one, which has now been delayed like 3 or 4 months now, which is another just poor customer service.
That's
situation.
why the guy wanted to buy my one, because he had ordered it, but he didn't want to wait.
Right.
So he just wanted something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So all that being said is they keep coming back to me. Apparently there's a sensor that will determine how much like ambient light is, or not light, but like it can determine how close to your wrist the device is, which would be a cool thing for me to know, and not the support team. So I could I could self-solve, but they basically say that it's not adequately pressed against my skin. I'm like, well, what else do you want me to do? So their suggestion is to wear it on my bicep.
Yeah, I've seen people do that.
Well, that's cool, but that's not why I bought the Whoop, was to have a bicep band on 24/7. And then just like they have I guess like they told me to wear it on my mid forearm, and I'm like, no.
Kind of like those, like a card dealer from
yeah,
like a cowboy movie.
So I understand that these are solutions that are viable to fix my data reading problem, but as a consumer who purchased a wrist banded device for the comfort and appeal of it being on my wrist, that's why I bought it. I didn't buy it to have to wear it on my forearm or bicep. So while I do understand in the sense of data accuracy their suggestion that I do that, I'm like, hey, sorry, that's not why I got your product. Like if I knew I had to wear it on my bicep, I would not ever have purchased it, because I just don't want something on my bicep. Which I don't understand either, because isn't there more flexation and
exactly because of your enormous biceps?
Yeah, my Arnold arms.
I had the opposite issue where it would double my heart rate, and so it kept on giving me these really aggressive strain scores.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I'd be 60 on my Apple Watch, which I had at the time, and then 120 or on my ticker, and then like 120 on my wrist, and I'd look at it, and it was super weird. And I never, the strain thing, that never made any difference to me. The only thing that it did tell me is that I consistently don't get enough sleep.
Right.
But it would always tell me these like just amounts of times that were just unrealistic.
Right.
And that and it wasn't even that I was trying to not sleep a long time. It's just that my body physically wouldn't let me sleep that long.
Right.
So what are you supposed to do? Your body wakes you up at 5 a.m. every day.
Tranquilizers.
Horse tranquilizers?
Yeah.
Ketamine?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, what's that?
No, I shouldn't joke about the other tranquilizers. But you're right. No, I mean, anyway, I love
that we got that close to being political, to making some political comment about
I don't want to be
insensitive
about
and then we decided to back off.
Well, yeah, so all this being said, for no good reason, is that I've been a little bit disappointed with my Whoop. I'm honestly still on the hook for this freaking 4.0 version.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
You can't cancel?
Well, I can. They promise that it's more accurate and
I just think
smaller.
Wrist-based heart rate monitors are funky, full stop. Period. To translate for the American audience.
Oh, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, I just think that, I've never had, even with the Apple Watch, I didn't have a consistent experience with it.
Right.
Sometimes it would just be wildly off. I remember doing one race, and it was telling me I did 185 throughout the whole race, just straight across 185.
Yeah.
Which is, as you know, I don't really hit 185 very often. And so
you and your
just
weird heart
was
rates.
annoying. It just was annoying. It was annoying.
Well, anyway, this is your unsponsored, unbiased take on the whoop. So,
who wants to wear like a chest strap
all day? Maybe they should just stick like diodes in my brain or something. There are people who have that for other reasons, but...
Well, should we dig into our cross race?
Yes. So Matt and I cross race this weekend.
It was at Steilacoom, which was where the 2019 Nats...
Yes. So there's a old fort here in Washington that's close to Tacoma. That's actually, interestingly... across the street from like a former state mental hospital.
Well, and it kind of has a bit of a dark history because it actually was like one of the first mental hospitals.
Right.
And apparently the grounds
are
just
haunted.
have like a ton of people buried.
Yeah, it's
like
weird.
People who were patients at these mental institutions.
Yeah.
And also some like indigenous burials, not like indigenous burial ground like horror movie, but like bad stuff happened there. Lots of people were killed and murdered there.
So it's a very
so
interesting...
we race our bikes there, which is just what the world is like these days.
So it is an interesting site for the historical significance, but it is a really cool park with like a big hill and a lake and open fields and lots of sports
like
stuff.
A forest section.
Yeah, but it's such a cool thing. And the thing when we had the Nats course here, many racers we talked to said that it was one of the closest. It was one of the most Belgium-like race courses that they'd ever raced in the U.S., which is super cool.
That is cool.
And
do you remember why it was? Like, what was it? Was it because I remember there wasn't a ton of like really technical turn. Like I think we would joke about the cross revolution like courses is that they're very much like, hey, here's an open field, let's put in a ton of turns.
Yeah, so I think a couple parts of it is like there's some steady grade sections, and then there's like a literal hill, a hillside. So both the run-ups, the descents, the long power climbs, and then just the ground there is somewhat soft. And so as the races go on, you just kind of always hook up in the dirt, and it's never really hard or rocky. It's not like a mixed soil type. It's just kind of soft, mushy, wet Northwest soil.
But it never really gets because I even remember when it rained on the nationals, it never really got really deep. It's like the water just kind of, it like puddles up, gets a little
mushy,
little chocolate mousse.
Yeah,
but it never really got super thick.
Yeah, and I think that's something else too. I mean, it literally rained, record-breaking rain for 5 days, Monday through Friday last week.
Yeah,
we raced on Sunday, and there was literally like no mud anywhere.
No, like
but it was wet.
I took a shower when I got home, and I didn't even wash any mud off my legs. It was like clean.
Yeah, so it's just a really cool course in the sense that, you know, it can be wet, but it's not muddy. It has like pretty intense run ups, some good climbing. So anyway, we had a good time. The only downside was when we started our race at like 9 something in the morning, it was like 35, 37 degrees, and all the grass was covered in frost. And I will say that despite praising the soil conditions, being the first race of the day, we were in the Cap 4 Open, and it had not quite been torn up yet, so it was all pretty jittery and bumpy. And but by the later races of the day, I did another lap at one point, and it was like really smooth. So
really,
yeah, way smooth. So anyway, that's kind of a bummer of being the first race of the day, but yeah.
A couple of features I did like this. Well, maybe I didn't like. It just was an interesting challenge. Is that 2 years ago we did the run up, which was a killer because you'd go down the straight, go through this bumpy like patch, and then go straight to the run up, and then go down the first descent. Whereas this year we kind of had a little bit more kind of back and forth turnings. doing motions with my hands and then remembering that people are going to be listening and not
hopefully
watching.
The video works this time around.
There are lots of back and forth motions, but it was the thing that was different is that when you did the run up, you then immediately went into a short climb, which was so hard. And the run up was much narrower because it just wasn't quite as broken up, so it was a lot harder to kind of get around people. But that was cool. And then we only did one run up, one descent, whereas 2 years ago we did 2 run ups and 2 descents. But it was fun. The only thing that I didn't like was that I don't like those curly curl things.
Right.
Where you go in a circle and then at some point you go out. I just find those, it's just like you're cornering for a minute, and we can do without that.
Yeah.
Lap times felt pretty good. They were about 10 minutes a lap. Danny and my race was really short though. They said 3 laps, and then we rolled in, and then we realized we'd only raced like 27 or 28.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts.
28 minutes. But I'm kind of glad we didn't do an extra lap. But I was really nervous kind of getting to the start line just because I hadn't raced in a year and a half or 2 years. No idea what my form was like. Wasn't really expecting very much. I was pretty happy to come in 10th. Which was great. I lost a few. So I'm just trying to think through.
His brain
I just remembered something. Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
Turn it off and on again. But it was such a fun race, and it was just like coming to the finish line. Like I sprinted like crazy to the finish line, and I get to the end, and I'm thinking I probably should have ridden harder. Like I just sprinted, 100% effort to get to the line. And I had tons of energy. Like I could have sprinted more.
Yeah, I hate that the announcers always they're like, oh, somebody saved some energy for the sprint, and you're like, yes.
Is that not a good? Should I not?
Yeah.
But it just made me realize that like either A, I could have done another lap, or B, I should have ridden harder.
Yeah.
I could have ridden harder because clearly I wasn't fatigued. So.
That
was encouraging.
This is fun to talk about because I realize for our listeners out there, like we're talking about our own personal racing, but this is kind of the fun part about cross racing, where in a crit you're playing a little bit of like Peloton type tactics. You're kind of hanging in the bunch, trying not to crash, basically. Whereas in cross, which we'll get to here in a minute, even though I know we've been jabbering a lot about our weeks in our racing, but there's a part of cross racing where if you just kind of do your thing, like yes, there's a race unfolding that you have to be mindful of, but part of it is if you as an individual can race a good race, depending on the conditions, depending on the type of course, depending on your strengths and weaknesses, like you can win. Even if you're not like in the front pack or the first one on the whole shot, out of the initial sprint, like it's just a dynamic type of racing where you can kind of find these little things to tweak each lap and like kind of measure your energy and your pace and, let the best racer win is kind of how it pans out versus like, oh, there are tactics, but it's not just the same quite level. It's not quite the same level of tactic that you see in other racing. So anyway, to your point, I had a very similar situation where like the first lap I was like, I could not get my heart rate moving, and I'm like, well, I'm like stuck. I'm like, I can't. I just could not get going, and I actually turned faster lap times as it went on, not because of my technical like prowess by any means, but simply just because like my motor, my engine, my body was finally going. And you're right. By the time I finished, I was like, crap, I had a lot left. I wish I could have known to get myself like revved up faster, which is kind of another thing that's just like part of the tactic of cross racing.
I realized like as I was driving to the event that I hadn't brought my trainer.
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized that even if I had brought my trainer, I wouldn't have been able to do anything about it because I don't have adapters. So I just did just like a hard lap just right before right before the race, and that got me good. So I ended up coming in 10th, which I was really happy with, even though I don't remember seeing 9 people ahead of me, but that's just that's just how it is. The other thing I did want to recognize is two things. So one is just that, like, Kelsey and Joey just are like cyclocross community for me. That's cross family. And last year when we were all lamenting that we were missing cross, part of me was missing just being under that shelter and like getting ready for my races and just talking with people and getting to know people in the cycling community and stuff like that. Like that was a huge part of it. And I don't know, like I see that and I always think, well, it would be so fun to have like our own team and to do that. But I feel like I would never be able to create a level of community that they're able to create. Right. And then why have a team if you can't create that? So that was really special. And then the second thing is that I just want to shout out to Buck Giles, who is he runs a shop out by like West Point by the ocean, and he and I were like pretty much like swapping like podium spots 2 years ago on this same series, and we would always talk. We'd always be racing against each other, and just kind of like got to know each other as a result, and started following each other on Strava. And so I rolled up and I saw him, and it was just like, dude, how's it going, man? I'm so glad you're here. And it was just really fun to be able to connect again with this dude that the only context that I know him is that we've just raced together. And he was just really, really kind. And just really like, man, I've been looking for your name on the like start list, and I'm so excited you're here. It's like so good to have you racing again. And dude, that felt really good. And that felt really good. And I never quite made it in front of him this year. It looks like he's probably going to podium the whole series. But I could see him, like he was always a turn or so in front of me, and I always felt like I was getting close to catching him. And in the end, I think I came in just 25 seconds down on him. So nice. 35. So still pretty close. But that was fun. That was neat.
Well, and dude, that's the other thing that's cool. Like I've invited my neighbors to come watch a cross race. He and his wife cycle, and I was like, you've got to come check it out when we have one in town. And they loved it. And I think it's, it's like kind of a beer league thing where, yes, like a lot of people show up just to ride a race and then kind of party afterwards. Like nice. We have a crew, of course, here in Seattle area that goes by the name of Hodala, who like that's kind of their thing. They make it fun and energized by infusing alcohol in some loud heavy metal, which is super rad. But
it's a fun vibe.
But that's really the cool part about cross. I actually just had an inspiration moment when you were talking where I was like, you know what I need to do next year is get like a food truck and do espressos and freaking beer and Fritz.
Yes.
And just like make it for real cross
just
and
every single one.
serve some French fries and some delirium and coffee for those who don't want to indulge. But that's the whole fun of it, is just the community, I think, is oriented around that. It's around relationship. It's around community. Seeing people week in and week out. I mean, I've had not maybe as close of a connection, but similarly, when I raced in 2017, would line up next to the same guys and start chit chatting and following them on Strava and giving them kudos on the rides and training. So, it's just super cool. And two, like, the women's cross racing, I think there's been a lot of sensitivity and awareness socially in general in many areas, but in particular with women's cycling, just to really think mindfully of equality and diversity, and just really celebrating kind of anybody and everybody that's out on a bike. And so I feel like the women's like races being just right, back to back with the men's, and you get to cheer on the women, and it just feels like everyone's there for everybody else. Like it's just a really cool vibe. And so yeah, it's been fun. And speaking of which, I was going to save this to the end, but just since we're here, maybe this can kind of transition us to the pro.
I'm not quite ready to talk about pro stuff.
We got to get
One
there.
more thing?
Yeah.
Well, so this is also my first time racing with my 3T, and like OMG, WTF.
Yeah.
It was just so much different riding with that bike compared to the rally and the Kona. Like, it just, I lost the front end one time. My back end was definitely like lost some pressure towards the tail end of the race.
Yeah.
But it felt so good. Like I want to race that bike all the time.
Yeah.
It truly felt like I had an advantage over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all.
Well, on that note, sorry, now I have two things to try to transition us out.
No, it was just the one more thing.
Okay, but
and then we were gonna.
So if you didn't notice, and it may be in the camera shot here, but I ride a Cervelo Aspero, which I raced in gravel, raced in cyclocross, and someone actually won the BWR Kansas edition on the Aspero just this last week, which is cool. But yeah, it's so interesting. The only disadvantage I've found is the lower bottom bracket. So when it comes to like off camber, like in the race where you do that circle and then come up, I would have pedal strikes and stuff like that. So, but yeah, a gravel bike on a cross course is pretty rad because it feels so much more stable. And if I just had a higher bottom bracket, but with like the a little bit longer geometry, man, I'd really love to keep racing a gravel bike on a cross course. It's really pleasant. Whereas a cross bike's like, sorry, super twitchy.
Yeah.
It's me making super twitchy noises.
And I actually don't think you really need that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because surely like with things like mud, like you just want to get through it.
Yeah.
You want to stay to your line as much. Plus the sand was so much easier this year than it was previously.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like I didn't put a foot down a single time in the sand pit.
Yeah.
And actually like I would gain places.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that felt really good. I just looked up the 3T Exploro. The bottom bracket drop is 70 mil. So
it's kind of
what's the Cannondale cross bike?
I think it's like so like 65-ish is kind of like a middle of the road for a cross BB drop.
Oh, really?
So that gets you a half a centimeter to a centimeter.
Oh, Super X.
Yeah, because I think mine's like 76 BB drop on my Aspero. So the difference of a centimeter of what?
Bottom bracket height 246.
No, that's not right.
It doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it's opposite. Drop. Anyways,
BB drop 70. Oh, interesting.
Oh, really?
But that's the 2017-2018.
Oh, no. Look at like the what is it? The Super 6 Evo CX, I think is like 65 or 67.
Evo. Which means but that's lower than mine.
Higher.
Oh, so it's from the I see. So it's from the quick release, the like hub axle line. It's from the axle
I don't know where
line.
they measure.
Well, presumably they take it from the axle and then go down, right? So then going down, so 70 goes down 7 centimeters from the axle, whereas what you're saying is that the Super 6 goes 65 mil from the axle.
Right.
Hold on, bottom bracket. No, it still says 6.9.
69 then? Sorry.
68 for the one that would be my size.
Well,
so that's interesting. But so what?
Though mine is very low. I think the Aspero's a 76. Okay, well, anyways, I didn't want to get stuck on bottom bracket drop.
No, this is important stuff.
We're 40 mintes in. We haven't even touched on our main subject. We've just been
this
jabbering.
is our main subject. We're talking about it right now. Where's the... Okay, anyway, I'll find it.
Well, the last thing
76.
76.
Yeah, so you have an additional 7 millimeters of drop.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, so that's almost... Huh?
Yeah,
wow.
my pedals are very low to the ground. which is nice on gravel, but in a cross course, you're like, I've learned now not to.
And then
pedal
you're
in
on
certain sections.
1725 cranks.
Yeah.
So you also, because I'm on 175.
Oh, interesting.
So actually, between you and me, that brings
it down to like 5 mil.
Yeah, like 4.5 mil difference.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Well, okay. So the last thing I want to say, in the spirit of the community and racing and just cycling in general, and especially given all the things that we talk about, mental health, COVID, your body, all the stuff. We, as a Northwesterner now, Pacific Northwesterner, was excited to see our own Courtney Mcfadden return to racing.
Oh yeah.
So she has been a premier. It's not quite a word in cycling. Maybe in football,
yeah.
But has been an elite. Sorry, that's the word. Elite women's cyclocross, and mountain bike too. Racer, who's I think based in Bellingham, so just up a little north from us. But yeah, she had posted on Instagram that she, just as many do, get to a point where they're just kind of tired and worn out, and like, why am I doing this? And the personal costs, both physical, emotional, and monetary, and all this stuff. And so she had kind of tapered back over the last few years, but jumped in and raced and won the women's category this week. So it's just, again, and I saw her follow-up post of just saying how much she enjoyed it. So again, it's you got to listen to your body, listen to your mind, take a break when you need to, but cross is just such a fun thing to come back to, and I'm just glad to see her race, glad to see many others participate in the spirit of all this COVID stuff. Feel as though life, that was one thing that I looked at over this weekend and was like, that felt like normal life.
Yeah.
And it was really pleasant.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was a bright spot. So all that being said, we love cross. We didn't mean to keep you on the hook for a lot of our personal anecdotes, but that's kind of what this podcast entails sometimes.
You mean anecdotes?
Yeah, whatever. For all intensive purposes.
For all intents.
Anyways, so what we did want to talk about...
Let's talk about some actual, pro
Let's talk
racing.
about something different, pro cyclocross.
Okay. Yeah, so...
Are you still looking at bottom bracket drop?
No, I was just looking at the location of the next race, and I remember it. It's because I remember, I was doing really well, and then I crashed, and then I didn't do so well.
Everything went to shit.
But, so... A couple of things to start off with before we talk about the World Cup Overreiser and the X2O Coppenberg Cross races from this weekend. One is that it looks like MVDP has announced that he'll be returning to cross sometime in mid-December. So obviously looking to kind of get warmed up and get some races under his belt for the Worlds. But given that he's already world champion, I'm pretty sure wouldn't he automatically get a front row?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that's just probably more for fitness and practice. But it looks like Pidcock and I believe Wout will be starting at the beginning of December. But let's talk about the Overijse. So Overijse is the sort of granddaddy of cross courses. It's been raced since the 60s. And this year's edition was a little bit different where typically it has these sort of... it's kind of on this hill. It feels quite similar to the Tabor race, the one that's where the castle is. Isn't that Tabor?
I'd know it if I saw it.
But it has a similar vibe to that, where it's kind of like uphill, and then you go down, and then you go up again, and then downhill. So it's sort of built on
really
the side
you go
of the
up
hill.
And downhill,
up and down the hill a couple of times. But one of the things that was missing is that in the previous descents, it used to have these zigzags that used to go back and forth, and then it would just have this really recognizable kind of off camber drop into this mud. What are the holes where the wheels go?
Ruts.
A rut, yeah. This sort of rut that would then kick you onto the cobblestone climb, and I always remember those back and forths because they used to be really they just like high risk. You know, they're really technical, and so it was just tons of moments where you just felt like the race could be won or lost there. And some of that was gone. Like, it didn't quite have the same vibe to it. They changed the course up quite a bit, and it kind of lacked some of those, like, kind of, you know, there's just those little areas that are just so recognizable they mark a course, like the Zonhoven, those descents, the sand descents, right? Like, if they took those away, it just wouldn't be Zonhoven anymore. So that was a shame. But we did see an amazing race by Blanka Katavas, the Hungarian Nat champion, who came fourth at Worlds. I think we talked about that a couple of weeks back. But just had such a technically clean race. And it was a really fun kind of back and forth with our friend Puck Peters, who again got on the podium and is just showing us that she's just going to be a racer to be reckoned with in the next couple of seasons. And then, like, Betsema, I don't know what happened to Betsema.
She kind of faded.
She did fade. She has been the racer that, well, I mean, she came in fourth. I think she started off real strong, and then Blanka and Puck Peters worked together to bring her back. Yeah. And then she just couldn't keep up with them. But as we'll talk about in the Coppenberg Cross in a moment, like, she is really, like, the most consistent racer right now. I don't know that she's had a finish outside the top 5 this season. If not the top 4, at least at any of the major races, she's been up there. And we saw an awesome result from Clara Hunzinger, who came in fourth after doing her usual. Okay, I don't know. I don't want to be mean to Clara. We like you, Clara. But just not having as strong a start. Sure. I was being too flippant than I feel like she deserves me to be. But really, really fun race.
Yeah. I think that was a good summary. I don't really have anything to add. I just, Kata Blanka Voss has been really, just a racer to be watched this season. She's been a factor in every race, similar to Puck Peters, where they both have really influenced each race and been at the front and set the pace and kind of been someone to challenge. And so it was a really deserved win to see her take that.
Top 6 in every race.
Yeah. So this was just cool to see her. Finally get the top step and I think really get the recognition she's earned over the course of the season so far. But I think for me, all my attention was on Coppenberg Cross. So I don't want to delay us into
cool.
Well,
that. Let's move on to Coppenberg Cross.
And there was a men's race, by the way. We just who
cares?
Okay. So Coppenberg Cross. Oh my gosh! Wow. So this course, to Matt's point, I think has some memorable features, namely the Coppenberg. But I think of it iconically not only for that, but like thinking of even in the last few years when Wout and NVDP contested this race, and I think it was the same year that Wout had faulted on the ride in Strade Bianche when he cramped at the very end. Was that Strade Bianche or Il Lombardia? No, that was Strade Bianche.
So, like on the climb into Siena.
Yeah. And so I think of like that duel of at the time it was Wout versus not Mathieu van der Poel, but
Philippe.
Alaphilippe.
Oh no. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Sorry, I'm totally taking this in a different direction. But what that picture of Wout, collapsing in agony trying to make this climb was the same that I remember Mathieu van der Poel a few years ago when he got to the top and literally just like peeled off of his bike and laid on the ground in exhaustion. So
Céline did the same thing.
Yeah, she did. So she took one playbook out of the old teammate.
The winner
Whereas the winner did not. you probably know, maybe you don't, but we'll get there in 2 seconds. But I just love this course for that cobbled climb, and it was the heaviest I can remember seeing it in the last several years, and was super slow. I think the women raced what, 4 laps.
It was 4 laps.
Four
laps. So they were 14-minute laps.
So just one of the biggest slogs. And I mean, there were points in the women's race where, you know, the cameras are always a bit deceptive, but it literally looked like they were riding at speeds that I race. Because it was just so heavy. And like, they looked like you could run faster. And in some cases, like Clara did have a little bobble and actually seemed to run faster than Betsema pedaling in some sections. So it was just a slog of a course, but hot damn, we had an amazing finish in our own to cheer on to the top of the podium. So,
who we partied with. After the after the 2019
we don't talk
Nats.
But
she was there.
She was. But Clara Hunzinger, U.S. national champ, riding in the Stars and Stripes. You know, it was kind of funny. I was super thrilled with her result the day before in 4th place, as Matt mentioned. It was funny listening to the announcers because she does start so slow that they literally like didn't even talk about her for the first 2 laps because she was back in like the top 10. But as I mentioned nearly 20 minutes ago in our episode, the cool thing about Cross is Clara just kind of sets her pace and isn't always the first in the whole shot, you know, doesn't really show up until the last couple laps, which is very similar to Katie Compton's racing style. But she just sets her pace and does her thing. And like, yes, the race is unfolding, and yes, she's still playing tactics, which I'll mention where that factored in later here in a bit. But she just is a diesel and just goes and goes and goes, and slowly, to her favor, was picking off one rider after another, and just turning like solid lap times until the last lap. I think she had moved into like third, from about like 5th to about 3rd to 2nd, and then the last lap began to battle Betsema, which was some of the most exciting racing I've seen all season.
Yeah, like you were mentioning MVDP and Wout shoulder to shoulder on some of those cross races from the 2017 season. Like this was like that. Like they were literally shoulder to shoulder, and it just doesn't get much more exciting than that.
Yeah,
and then to be watching it and already have known the result. I don't know if you knew what the result was.
I did sadly find out via Insta, but
so I had found out, and I saw this study that this university did on movies, and they did a study on people where half of the people were told the ending. So like, let's say on Sixth Sense, they were told, oh, by the way, he sees dead people and Bruce Willis is dead in it. And then the other half weren't told. And they said that in the majority of cases, the people that knew the ending actually enjoyed the movie more.
Interesting.
Because they were able to view it from a different perspective. And so I think about that a lot when I'm rewatching races.
Yeah.
And how when you know the result, you watch it a little bit more critically. And you watch it a little bit more to understand how the race unfolded. Right. And I think you get more out of the experience.
Well, I agree. And I think that's partly where I noticed that the announcers literally almost made no comment about Clara until, I mean, obviously she wasn't present in the front of the race, but they would go through all the contenders and they would be like, and Lucinda Brand and, you know, Catablanca Voss, who won? And like Clara almost got no mention. I mean, she did get a couple, but it seemed that no one would have thought she was going to win that race, which was really the underdog moment.
That was fun.
But all that being said, if you watch any race this season, please go back and watch this. It was a really fun race. Clara did take the top step of the podium in a fierce battle with Denise Betsema, who finished only 12 seconds back. in Casablanca Vos, an amazing second day race, having won the day before in third. But again, I think the star of the day, not only for our own enjoyment as a fellow American racer, but Clara Hunzinger. I talked about there is still the tactical battle, and she met Denise Betsema's tactical approaches, like tit for tat. Like every time Denise would accelerate, Clara would accelerate. She
could deliver. She
just knew that if she could stay in Denise Betsema's kind of head, that she could power through the muddy sections and the uphills. And so she did, and it was just it was an incredible race and something just so awesome to see. And I think Clara's first World Cup win, really her
elite win
in the World Cup, but elite win. But this is really kind of her coming up, as the next American cyclocross star.
It's going to be fun too. So the Coppenberg Cross was part of the X2O series,
right,
which is like a mini stage race where the racers' times contribute to their overall standing. Right. And so if you miss a race, you automatically are deducted 5 minutes. And so that's, it can be that Mathieu misses 2 races and then comes in and can win the whole series if he has enough time gap. Excuse me. But so in this case, we've got the American Hanzinger leading on Betsema, who's probably the best rider, the most consistent rider right now. And riders like Brand and Alvarado are 2+ minutes down.
Wow.
And Brand has had just a challenging, I think, return to European racing is probably the best way to say that.
Well, and she's clearly was technically outraced on this race, where she just really struggled with almost every line and all the mud, and she definitely has a advantage on the longer, faster, less technical courses.
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. It's going to be fun to see if Hunzinger can just continue to maintain that lead, because I guess she has a 12-second lead on Denise Betsema, which isn't very much for the X2O series, and it's not really very much against Betsema. So, well,
and the interesting thing is they get time bonuses in the at the first lap.
Yeah,
interesting.
So Betsema. So then that means Betsema, because of the time bonus that she gained, she's only 7 seconds down. But then, weirdly, because Blanca Catavas, she came in 35 seconds down, she's actually 45 seconds down.
Oh, gotcha. So
the top 3 are all within 45 seconds, and then after that, Yara Castelline, who has been racing super well lately, is 147 down.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, all this being said, the women's cross racing has been super exciting. And also Celine del Carmen Alvarado is also kind of coming on form after a little bit of illness at the start of the season. So she put in a really great race. I think was going tit for tat with Lucinda Brand for most of it too. So there was another fun challenge to watch, but yeah, so it's been exciting. But let's we got a couple little news bits here, and then maybe try to wrap up. I know we're getting a little great. I will lead us into the news segment this week on Off the Back Podcast News. I don't know, we never had that segment before. We
loosely had the news.
Yeah,
no, I'll talk about this because I watched it.
Okay, and Matt, over to you for today's leading story.
I was just thinking about cyclocross and like the top 8 riders, but and trying to come up with a thought around it. But so I was distracted. But I did want to talk about Alex Dowsett. So he attempted the world hour record today with probably the most dialed bike, pedal, shoe,
because it was a factor,
skin suit, helmet, glass, everything was just super dialed,
chamois cream.
And sadly he didn't quite make it, and it was kind of tough to watch because you could tell, from about 20 minutes in, you're thinking, oh, he's got to be doing a negative split, and then that split never went negative.
Yeah,
it just went more positive. but he was super upbeat about it and just, you know, recognized that he went out there, he did his best, and that was his best time, and that's his time. Like,
yeah.
I definitely got the sense he's not going to try it again after this. It was about just over 500 meters short of Kempenart's record. In the same velodrome as well, which I thought was interesting. But, you know, he said he had 3 objectives, which was the British record, the world record. Those are one objective. Raising awareness around hemophilia, which is something that he suffers from, and then raising money for it. And he said that even though he wasn't able to make the first goals, like the other 2, he felt like were super successful. Nice. And what I didn't realize is that, yes, so he's a hemophilic, which essentially means if he cuts himself, he doesn't have enough red blood cells to clot, I think.
I don't know if it's red. It might be...
No, because anyway, we're not scientists, so don't quote us on that, but I always thought red blood cells are the ones that clot.
But we have scientific views that other people should listen to.
But okay, let's move on. Okay, I don't know where we're going now, and it's feeling scary. So anyway, so what I realized is that it's actually hereditary. So he passed on like hemophilia to his daughter, which I thought was really interesting. And I think, you know, like if there's not further evidence that, you know, athletes can perform at an amazing high level while also taking care of themselves and keeping safe so that they don't put themselves, you know, like crashes are crazy in cycling. You know, I think he's an amazing example of that, and I hope inspires a ton of people who have been told no over and over again in their life, that they can say yes, and like, yes, I'm going to go race bikes.
I love that.
So I thought that was really sweet.
Speaking of saying no, I forgot to mention my kids started racing cross too.
Oh, that's exciting.
And it was hard. It was hard for me because one of my daughters, who I know is very slow on the bike, she was like, I really want to race. I'm like, I don't think this is a good idea. But as a parent, I was just like, I'm gonna say yes. Anyway, but yeah, no, really cool with Alex Dowsett as well, and you know, disappointment that he didn't reach out to achieve a few of his goals, but you know, I think smart of him to just say, hey, like, this isn't just about me. It's I'm gonna use this for good too. So. Couple last little bits. Elliot Viviani is going back to Ineos. So just interesting move there. We'll see what happens. He did have some success in the track world, in the UCI track championships. So, still a force to be reckoned with, although he has kind of been a little under the radar on the last few road seasons, but we'll see what he does at Ineos. And then, finally, although we didn't put this in here, maybe we can talk about it later, but old Sagan's moving to Team Direct Energie. Is that about right?
That's 100% right.
Great. How would you say it?
Direct Energie.
That's pretty close.
Yeah,
it's pretty close.
You were there, dude. You were there.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Maybe we'll come back to that. I think there's a little more to chat about. But
let's talk about that next time.
Great. See, this is what you do with your listeners. You give them something to want to come back to. And the last part is Ashton Lambie, whom, if you don't know, is a good old feller from America who's got this wicked mustache, but also happens to race does track cycling, and managed to win the UCI Worlds for individual pursuit over Jonathan Milan and none other than Filippo Ganna. So pretty cool to see him take that win. Fastest man on the track currently, and in the individual pursuit is a pretty ridiculous effort. I think his power numbers were pretty big. So
there were watts.
There were lots of watts.
Loads of watts.
But pretty cool. You know, there's it's just awesome to see him win. Fun guy to look at and watch race also. I love his mustache.
Dude, I raced 8 times in 2019.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so there you go. And I'm probably going to race 3 times.
There you go.
This season.
Nothing like baby steps backwards.
Next year, though, every weekend.
I love it. Well, hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. We just were so excited about Cross this week that we wanted to wear out your ears with crosstalk. So we
that sounds like an NPR.
Yeah, hi, welcome to Crosstalk. We're here to discuss cross cycling for all of our listeners out there.
I'm ready.
Yeah, hey, we appreciate the listenership again as always. We hope that we are a central voice for you in cycling, being that we are not pros at much of anything. We're just fans, big fans, and we want to share our fandom with you. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in. It means a lot, and please give us a like or a reference to your pals out there. Tell them about these awesome guys at Off the Back Podcast. We'd appreciate it. And have a great week, and we'll be back soon.
Cheers.